we have to support Israel because what's good for Israel is in many ways good for the United States. However, what's good for Netanyahu is not the same as what's good for Israel.
Now, okay? Can you define that difference there? That's key.
There's three important differences here, right? So first of all, it's frustrating to me how many people don't understand the difference between a Jew and Israeli.
Yeah.
Not the same thing.
What, Israeli or
Israeli?
Okay.
Right? A Jew is someone who follows and believes in Judaism. That can be any citizen of any nationality anywhere in the world. They can be Jewish. You don't have to be Jewish in order to be Israeli. Israeli is a national identity, like American or Brazilian or whatever else, right? So the fact that Israel's government does not separate church and state, the fact that Israel, is a democracy that doesn't differentiate between church and state, that's one thing, but it's different from saying that if you don't support Israel, you don't support Jews.
Yes.
Completely different things. Then you have the entrenched political right-wing establishment of Israel. That is Netanyahu. So you've got one element of a government, that's Netanyahu. The government is the government of Israel. And then the faith of the state is Judaism. So you can be a Jew who has no connections to Israel, and that doesn't mean that we have to it makes me angry when people think that there's something wrong with a Jewish person because of what Israel's doing to Palestine.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's insane.
But I just want to say that out loud because you can support Jews and Judaism without supporting Israel. And I'm also saying that to all the Jewish people out there who are being told that if someone doesn't support Israel, then they are anti-Semites.
Right.
That's not true.
Yeah.
You can disagree with Israel's national policies and still have zero bias against the Jewish people. You can also disagree with Netanyahu and still support Israel.
Absolutely, yes.
But nobody's thinking of it that way. People think that Netanyahu is Israel and Israel is Judaism.
It's so stupid. Yeah.
And that's how we end up. And unfortunately, because our media in the United States is commercially based, it's a for-profit business.
Yes.
Anything that the media puts out that they want to get people stirred up, emotional, angry, alarmist, they'll make sure that they tie all those terms together. And, America hates Jews and wants to support Netanyahu.
And that's because, you're taking the words out of his mouth. He says he makes no distinction between anti-Semitism and anything that speaks out against Israel, which is, I would say by definition, defining himself and his policies as Israel itself.
Right.
And that's when I've been talking with people about this, I'm like, look at all the Israeli people who are in the streets right now.
Calling for a new leader.
Yes, and these are not like Columbia protest motherfuckers, like morons. These are people who are passionate about their country, who are just like, yo, can we get a new? Everyone wants to be safe. No one wants terror attacks. Can we get a new fucking leadership in there? Because Netanyahu's the symbol of it because he's the head of the government. But I've also said this to people, if you've looked at his cabinet, he looks like a leftist compared to some of those people. They just got to get rid of some of the current administration, which, yes, also includes him. And if you get someone a little more moderate in there, there's always going to be disagreements. There's going to be people who are like, oh, my God, Israel's only going to do what's good for Israel and all this stuff. You'll always have that. But, I feel like it could be a lot more manageable because you're not going to win the PR campaign if you're just saying the only end is total victory. When you have all these – and I want to introduce this idea – all these other countries around there who – there's some that are hostile, and then there's some who are not, who are sitting there saying, look, we want a two-state solution. We want Israel to exist, but you can't do it completely all on your terms, which is what Netanyahu insists on.
Right.
So a guy that I look at a lot, this is why I bring this up, who is a gangster, he's really fucking cool, is the King of Jordan. This dude never wanted to be king. Mm-hmm. His father was croaking on his deathbed. He's like, you're going to be king. And he's like, what the fuck did you say? And he passed over the older brother. And so this guy had been traveling around the world, wanted a whole different life, takes up this, I guess calling or whatever. And in America, obviously, we're not huge on kings and queens and shit. We kind of fought a war over that. But I'll make an exception for this dude. I've had multiple people in here who are friends with him. Like Joby Warwick, tight with him. And Joby's written some things that aren't great for him. And the guy still likes him, which I really like. And Remy Adeleke is good friends with him. A couple other people are as well. But this guy, if you look at his history of all the, he took power, I think, in 98, 99. So think of all the things that have happened since then. Started with 9/11 right at the beginning all the way to where we are now. All these different crises that have happened, if you listen to what he said right before they did or right at the beginning, he play-by-plays what's going to happen. And so one of the things that he said on October 10th or something like that, after October 7th, is that he's like, look, obviously our country has an allyship with Israel, but, and I don't know if he said it in these words, but he was essentially saying that doesn't mean that our current governments always have to agree with each other because there's political differences. And he said, one of the questions he was getting was, well, then why won't Jordan take in the Palestinian refugees? And he's like, I'm glad you asked that. I will give the worst parts of Israel's government exactly what they want if I do that, because that will be effectively ethnically cleansing people from the land, getting it out of their hands.
Right.
Doesn't have to be a genocide or something. Getting them off of there, and Israel can go take that land.
Right.
And he's like, I don't agree with the current administration's policies on that. And again, I don't think he said it exactly like this, but he was insinuating like, just get new leadership in there, and maybe we can get this thing done,
Right.
and everyone can go home.
Egypt's saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's twisted politics, because you got Israel saying that the Muslim world won't take Muslim refugees. And then you've got the Muslim world saying, we're not going to take refugees because you're going to block them out. You're never going to let them come back. And essentially what you are doing is you're cleansing Muslims from their land, from their promised land.
Yep.
So it's a disaster. And it doesn't help that Netanyahu gets confused with being representative of Israel when he's not. And it doesn't help that Israel gets represented as a democracy when it has absolutely been a thriving democracy in the past, but it has been showing signs of weakening democratic values.
Why do you say that?
Because how many, like you said, Netanyahu's been in power for in and out of power for 25 years.
Yeah.
Right? For people who don't know, Netanyahu is the Israeli equivalent of all the drama that surrounds Donald Trump. Right? He is also under corruption charges. He is also under criminal charges. He is also known as being somebody who is hyper loyal to his own faction rather than to the people of Israel. There's a half of Israel doesn't want Netanyahu in power, just like half of the United States doesn't want Donald Trump to be in power.
Yeah.
Wildly controversial figure. Only somehow he has been a prime minister, moved out of the office, moved back into the office, always retained some kind of power, even when he's shrouded with criminal and corruption charges and fraudulence charges, right? Like there's all sorts of bad stuff around this guy, but he still has this power because, like you said, his cabinet, his cronies are ultra-Orthodox, ultra-right, and they're the ones that are really calling the shots. The world can hate Netanyahu because he takes the bullets for everybody else that he represents. But the question is Israel becoming more democratic? Because they're calling for, just look at what happened, after Benny Gantz, who was part of the war cabinet. Benny Gantz stepped out of the war cabinet in May, I want to say it was.
I think that's right, yeah.
And he said, if we don't have a solution to end Gaza, I will leave the war cabinet.
Yeah, respect to him, by the way.
And then he did. He said, fuck this, you guys, you don't have a plan for Gaza. I am leaving. I won't be part of this. What did Netanyahu do next? He dissolved the rest of the war cabinet. He was like, oh, well, shit, if Benny's going to leave,
we don't need it.
We don't need it at all. I got your war cabinet of one right here. And then all these, what's that sound like, dude? That sounds a whole hell of a lot more authoritarian than it does democratic, right? So, and then Jordan is a fantastic example because Jordan, they're gangster in Jordan.
Yeah.
Like,
Mukhabara?
The American military loves working with the Jordanians. The Jordanians like working with the U.S. military. They are not oil rich. They are just legit, hardworking, like industrial, entrepreneurial mindset people in the Middle East. And they're strategically relevant because they're neighbors to Israel right there in the center of the Middle East. But they're also Sunni and pro-Sunni, pro-Islam, pro-everything else. So Israel is not the only benefit or the only benefactor that we have in the Middle East. We're on good terms with UAE. We're on good terms with Saudi. We're on good terms with Jordan. We have other allies in the region. But the reason that Israel is so valuable to the United States is because we built that country after World War II. Like their democracy is based on our democracy, based on the UK democracy. Their industrial base, their manufacturing process, their natural resources are valuable to us, whether it's the gem trade. I mean, one of the largest exporters in the world of high-tech medical equipment is Israel.
Yeah.
So if you want an MRI, you're getting it out of an Israeli machine, unless you want to start getting your MRI out of a Russian or Chinese-made machine.
No, fuck that.
Right? So there's all sorts of reasons why we want to maintain, not to mention the promise that we made to the Jewish people coming out of World War II, that we would make sure that never happens again. Right? So there's all sorts of reasons why we need to protect the state of Israel. But that doesn't mean we need to adhere to this idea that there'll never be a two-state solution on the land where Israelis live.
You think that we built it, though? That's an interesting comment.
Oh, are you kidding, man? That was our MO coming out. Who built France? We did. Who built Germany? We did.
I agree with that.
UK? We did. Japan? We did. Everybody who was devastated coming out of World War II, we built their countries, rebuilt their countries with debt, financing, with democratic principles, whatever else, right? And that's what we did with Israel too. We went in there and we were like, hey, we're going to give you this land. And on top of that, we're going to give you economic structure. We're going to give you trade. We're going to give you aid. We're going to make you dependent on us. And then in the process of doing so, Israel became very wealthy. And guess what? Israel buys all their weapons. Guess where they buy all their tech from? Us.
Yeah.
So
I understand that. Yeah. I mean, Germany's like the ultimate case study of that, literally. Like the whole western half of the country was done by us after that. That was crazy. But, you and I, the last time we were sitting in a studio together, was down in Tampa with Danny and Jim like a week before October 7th. So we were like 2 weeks off having a fireworks of a podcast. But, you know, this is the first time we're really talking about that and litigating what the fuck happened here. And so I remember the last time we were in a studio, just you and me, was June 2023. And to your point earlier, we talked a bit about Mossad there for maybe 5 minutes or something about some of the tactics and stuff like that. But they're at the center of October 7th to me because, you know, if you've studied up Mossad, and I mean, for you, if you've seen it, because you worked in espionage, so you know a lot more than us, like they're widely respected as a very talented intelligence agency for various reasons. You can read books like Gideon's Spies. You can read a book like Ronan Bergman's Rise and Kill First, which is really, really telling as far as the mentality and everything. And then you look at something like October 7th and you're like, how the fuck did they let this happen? Because, you know, you're talking about guys, obviously it was a very impressively executed mission funded by Iran, as you laid out earlier, not disputing that. But like they still had to go across the border into Israel, which, you know, I haven't been on that border. I think I was when I was 18, but I don't remember it, so that doesn't count. Like, as far as recently, like when I talk to people who have been there in the last couple of years, you can't take a shit near that border without a fucking sniper rifle trained on you. So how much had to go wrong for something like that to actually happen? And for all, I mean, there's what, like 1,300 people that were killed or something like that? There's a lot of people.
So the reality is that the way that attack happened on October 7th would have required a lot of communication and cooperation, collaboration between multiple different agencies in Israel. Mossad is charged with external intelligence, meaning intelligence coming in from outside of Israel. Shin Bet is in charge of protecting the land of Israel. Shin Bet's their internal service. It's almost like FBI and CIA. But then it happened on the border, which means that there's like a border control element, and their border patrol element in Israel is closely tied to their defense force, IDF. So you basically have three different organizations that all have to collect information and communicate and disseminate that information with each other in order to identify a threat, and then they all have to collaborate to protect and prevent against that threat. So what happened on October 7th isn't a failure of one agency. It's a failure of multiple agencies. And since the October 7th attack, what we've learned is that there were members of the IDF who saw suspicious activity and reported it up the chain. And then the people up the chain within that agency had differing opinions about whether or not it should be disseminated to Mossad or Shin Bet, or the credibility of the reports at all. Shin Bet had reports that they escalated up the chain. Mossad had reports that they escalated up the chain. But at the bureaucratic level, the communication didn't happen. And if anything, in my opinion, that is what makes October 7th similar to 9/11. It was a failure of communication between multiple agencies that resulted in a tragic attack.
Yeah, here we had the CIA and FBI famously going at it and not exchanging info.
Which led to the development, the whole creation of the Director of National Intelligence, the whole creation of TSA, the whole creation of Homeland Security. All of that
government agencies.
Because
love that.
The two couldn't talk, so we need three more to make sure they talk.
Throw another letter in the alphabet.
Could you imagine? That's like saying like a husband and a wife can't talk, so what we need is more spouses.
That's right.
It's like, you know what I really need is I need another husband and two more wives to be part of this. And that's going to improve our communication.
Yo, fuck the husband, but we'll take a couple more wives. That's it. Got to have some options, baby. But I don't know, you know, that day has been relitigated because of what has happened politically and then on a war aspect afterwards. And so you have this very, very strong sentiment around the world where it's much more like, yo, fuck Netanyahu and what's going on here, because obviously terrorist attack, very bad. Obviously there has to be defense or something like that for that problem not to exist. But people get hung up on, you know, things Netanyahu said in the past. Like in 2019, he said in the Knesset, like, if you don't want a two-state solution, you have to be okay with funding Hamas. Does that mean Israel was funding Hamas? Not necessarily. You don't know that. But when you have the leader of the party saying that, it's like, oh, you know, are you playing two sides against the middle here to get what you want? And, you know, because something bad will happen if you do that. No matter how you're getting the money there, hidden or not, it doesn't really matter. You know, and there seems to be an indiscriminate, and unfortunately, this does happen in war all the time. We've seen it, but there's an indiscriminate effect on human life that we're seeing in Gaza. And I say that with the asterisk that, like, you can't believe every number that comes out. There's propaganda on both sides. Right. When I see the death count, like I looked at the death count this morning, I'm like, okay, it's probably not that, but it's not good. There's rockets being fired everywhere. The images are the images when you look at it from a drone. Like, yes, there's cities that are leveled. I get it. War is ugly, but like, where does it end?
I think that's the $1 million question. I don't see this conflict